Thank you so much for coming on Career Tea today. I know your schedule is very, very busy, so I appreciate you coming on. So to kind of get started, I want to learn about where you went to college, and how you got to the decision to choose your college that you want to go to and what you majored in.
Okay. Yeah, I went to Boston College. Choosing college, that was interesting because I was struggling with narrowing down a place that I could run track competitively, but also have competitive higher education. So I was between Bates College, which is like a small school in Maine.
Okay. And you're from Boston, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from the greater Boston area. So was mainly looking at schools around there, nothing too far.
A lot of people want to get away from home when they want to go to college, but you didn't want to. You want to stay around.
I was a little baby. But I think it was also tough because with track, I wasn't the best, but I was competitive. And so I wasn't getting recruited by like Oregon or the big schools.
Yeah.
And BC was the best Division I school that also had really great education.
Nice.
So it was like the perfect balance and mix of everything. And that's kind of why I chose it.
Yeah. What did you run in track?
So I was a long jumper and a high hurdler.
I did hurdles in high school and I hated it. It was, I mean, almost everybody that did it like hated it, unless
I loved it.
the top two people, they obviously loved it. But like everybody, coaches sometimes kind of influenced some athletes to do hurdles because nobody really wanted to do them, and we needed hurdlers. People hated them. I mean, when you trip over those hurdles, those are probably like the worst moments in like your track and field career.
Yeah, it could be embarrassing. I never actually tripped and fell in a race, but hitting the hurdle, I have a high pain tolerance, so that was a big deal.
Nice. So you chose Boston College to go to, and what did you decide to major in, and how was that influenced? Because a lot of students, some students will know exactly what they want to go study in college.
That's the biggest joke,
right? And a lot of students will kind of like not know, they'll go in undecided, or some students will have an idea and they'll just go in with something in the hopes of, hey, I might eventually like change it up. So what did you go in as, and how did that come about?
I had no clue what to do, and I wanted to leave it open. So I had to choose which college. So like there was the arts and sciences one that had the most sort of flexibility, I felt like. So I chose that college versus the Carroll School of Management, which I realized later on that I probably should have done that. But I was like a bio major or something, just comical. I had one bio class, got a C, and was like, this is not it.
Definitely not going into science.
Oh God, yeah. I remember just sitting in the class looking at Twitter because I was like, I know I'm not going to digest any of this. So then I switched to economics. Way better, except for the math portions. That was very iffy, but I loved what was behind it in terms of microeconomics, macroeconomics, and just like the psychology behind it. And the electives for economics were great. Economics of inequality, economics of the family, all of that was super, super interesting. And so then that sort of got me into marketing a little bit because of the psychology aspect and how consumers make decisions. And so then I was able to do an unofficial marketing minor in the Carroll School of Management.
Got it. I took some like economics classes. I think I took an economics class in high school maybe, but I remember taking one in college. And I thought that was like one of the hardest subjects. Like some of the stuff we were learning in our economics class, and like just how hard and difficult it was to understand. Like I lost interest, and I never really even give it a thought of like, hey, what can I go into career wise, with economics. So that's pretty interesting that like you like took that and you were like, hey, this is pretty interesting and you like it. Do you have people in your family with like economics background that might have influenced, your kind of understanding and like interest in the subject?
Yeah, I want to say that my brother did an economics major, and he definitely took that and ran with it in terms of finance and practicing numbers, looking at economic trends for valuations and totally the finance world.
Right.
Whereas I went with it and was like the people behind
With the marketing side.
yeah. Like how everyday people affect the economy and everything. So I first was thinking that would be a good decision because I knew that I was similar to my brother. I knew it was successful with him, and I kind of rolled with that. And like my mother had always been in sales, and my dad in some sort of similar type of role. So I was thinking it was a safe bet.
Yeah, so you're like, it's definitely like a major where there's like many routes and paths that you could potentially take with it, right?
Yeah.
So it eventually led you to the Carroll School of Management, right?
Yep.
That was what it was called, Carroll. And that's essentially what you were interested in. At the time, did you know, like now you say like, hey, I should have probably like applied and aimed for that college.
Yeah.
At the time, was that as clear for you or
it
no?
was. It was, yeah. Because I realized how much I was enjoying these classes, and I just missed the mark or something of being able to transfer in. And I think they have now made it a little bit easier.
To like switch schools.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm assuming like you might have been in your like second year or something when you took that marketing course?
Yeah. I think my first marketing course was my sophomore year, and then junior year I was able to take some of those classes that were in the Carroll School of Management, and so that was great because they didn't stop me from taking those classes. It just stopped me from having an official marketing minor.
Yeah.
But I still say that I minored in marketing because I took all the requirements that was needed for it. But yeah, so that led to the sort of realization, like, I think there's something to this that I could do for maybe a job. Yeah.
So you start, kind of going like that marketing route, right? At one point, are you like realizing like, I want to kind of go towards full marketing, and we'll get to like your full-time career, but at what point were you like, I want to kind of divert away from like economics? Like I'm thinking about like what year in school was it?
So,
because as you're approaching like your third and fourth year too, like you got to start thinking about internships, and I feel like that's where it becomes a little more serious of like, you have to be a little bit more sure, I guess, what you want to intern in, because you can use those internships for full time.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought that any economics class was going to benefit me, even if I was in a marketing internship or role or whatever. It was always going to be beneficial knowledge. Yeah. And so that never left me. I was never totally turned away from economics because there were still learnings that I could take into marketing. Yeah. Like I actually had, I think this was the big shifting point. I had an economics elective class that was advertising and media markets. And that like blew my mind because we actually had a homework assignment that was about the Facebook algorithm for ads.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And I said, oh shit, this is another world. Yeah. And I thought it was so cool, and it really was bridging the gap between those worlds. And so I think that even to this day, like I use that economics knowledge. Yeah. It's so funny. I say supply and demand like 1,000 times a day, every single day. Never thought that would happen, but but it was perfect.
Yeah, something to take on.
It really worked out. I don't know if that even answered your question.
No, it did. So as you go through like your college years, did your college require you guys to take internships? Because like my school, we had to have certain amount of time doing an internship to get those credits in order to graduate. which it was good. You know, it was a lot of pressure, but in my opinion, it was good because it influenced students to really try to get that internship, which is all for benefit, you know, of essentially getting that full time. You know, no one can really, you know, slack around and not do an internship. You had to do it to graduate. So what was your,
I don't think it was.
There was no requirement.
And I'll be honest, I struggled so much with internships and getting an internship and finding one that I was interested in and on all of that. I don't know why it was such a big struggle, and for some reason it really, really was, and I got so disheartened. I found certain connections like through the track alumni, and was kind of taken in by an alum who gave me an internship that was very basic. And
that was your first one?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was in? Kind of like what was your role and like what you did there?
Yeah, it was for Bay State Financial.
Okay.
And it was in the John Hancock Tower. It was super cool to like go up there, one of the biggest buildings in Boston.
Yeah.
But it was very basic work, and I was just some sort of general intern, kind of helping with emails and files and printing, like very basic stuff. And I told him that I was interested in marketing, and then he showed me some little like newsletter software that he used for emails. And that was like about it that I got. But he paid me well. He treated me very nicely. And so I did that, and I kept my eyes open. I was dabbling. I went into also a ambassador like role program for Muscle Milk.
Okay.
So I was a Muscle Milk ambassador.
Nice.
And it actually was so much fun. It was very marketing 101, like events, and nothing too digital was what I was doing as much.
And what years were there? Were you?
That was my junior year.
Junior year. Okay.
Yeah. Mainly a lot of it was junior year. Oh, I think before that I had a summer internship that was through my brother that was all like finance driven.
Nice.
And investments, and it was definitely a lot of just like printing, answer phone calls, like.
I mean, you get to kind of see the day to day of what they're doing too, you know?
Yeah.
Some of like the early internships in school, you know, I never really knew what I should be expecting. Now that I look back, like one of my internships, like at the time, I felt like I wasn't doing anything, right? But like, I guess like it's kind of like learning the day to day, seeing what it's like, you know, the internship was kind of for me to get a feel of like, hey, do I like this type of work? Do I not like it?
Yeah.
So were those 3 internships that you just mentioned, are those the only internships that you did? And when I say only, I mean that 3 is a lot. You know, a lot of people will have 1 or 2, so 3 is a lot of internship to have.
I wouldn't even call the Muscle Milk Ambassador an internship. It was almost like just part-time work that was kind of easy. Yeah, like a side gig. I was doing a lot of sampling. So literally just like bottles of protein drinks. And
did you try them too?
Yeah, I mean they weren't good. No, Muscle Milk is not that good.
Okay.
It's like bad for you and just doesn't taste great. But
so I should not trust their ambassadors.
I mean, I was just saying, well, protein's healthy.
Yeah.
Like, you can drink your protein.
I wonder if I haven't heard of like Muscle Milk, I guess, in a long time. Like years ago,
they
like
definitely
I
died
would hear,
down.
but yeah, not anymore. I guess there's so many other products now, like in that line, that Muscle Milk's probably like not a thing anymore.
Yeah, I know, but it was fun at the time.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I met people from the Muscle Milk team as like a kickoff event before. But then I did have another internship that was at a startup.
Okay.
That was unpaid, which kills me to this day how they do that.
I hope the experience at least was worthy.
It was helpful. It kind of kicked me in the ass a little bit.
In what sense? Like
the startup vibe. The founder was so driven and so strong-willed and like spoke intelligently, but so confidently as well. And was very, like, kind of asked for a lot, you know?
Yeah.
But it was a fintech sort of startup, but I had a marketing internship role there. And that was overall, like, really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think I learned various stuff about startup life.
Yeah. Do you remember what they were called?
Yeah, it was called Learn Lux.
Learn Lux. Okay.
Yeah.
So out of like the 3 internships that you did, which one did you like the most? And if you were to like go back to school, would you have done those internships again? I know you said this one was like unpaid, but it sounds like it was a cool experience. I mean, startup does sound like a tough environment just because those people that are, they are, high achieving people, probably very fast paced. So I'm sure it was a really good experience, even though it was unpaid.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I would choose that one. I think also because I was getting warmer and warmer with my choices and my roles.
Career.
Because, I was starting to understand my pathway and my interests more. So...
What did you do for them on the marketing side, I guess? You said it was fintech and you were on the marketing side.
Yeah, so they had specific, digestible, easy to understand finance lessons, essentially, catered to millennials.
Got it.
So short and simple, trying to make it as easy as possible. And I helped with kind of social media campaigns and writing blogs.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was understanding what we needed to create and why.
Yeah.
And like the coordination of how that works with Instagram and Facebook ads, but also with like having it align with tax season if you're putting tax lessons out, and then the whole audience targeting piece was newer to me then, and how you actually go after certain people and target people as a direct to consumer type of company. They actually have switched more of a B2B.
Okay.
I think they had to pivot a little bit, but that was a learning.
Yeah. And I'm sure you probably brought a lot of knowledge from your economic major as well. As you say, it was, kind of had to reach out to people, had to market to different groups of people.
And my marketing classes as
right,
well.
And your marketing classes as well. So as I'm learning more about your internships, those two mix, economics and marketing, seems like a good mix for the type of internships you were taking.
Yeah.
I remember you said in the beginning that your internships, it was kind of hard to get going and kind of get your internships. What would you say was I guess the key, to kind of breaking into getting your first internship, and then the other ones as well. And that could be kind of advice also to students that are maybe struggling with finding internships.
I don't know if there was one key. It definitely is always a numbers game. So I was applying to as many as I could.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I will say I was horrible at interviews.
Yeah.
And that was a real big weak spot. Practicing those was tremendously helpful, and getting all the blunders out. I blew so many interviews that I wish I could look back on, because they were probably comically horrible. But yeah, that was tough. That was really tough for me personally. So practicing interviews and being able to practice the proper preparation for interviews, understanding what am I saying here? I need to be better with speaking, better with problem solving during an interview, even talking about myself in a fashion that promotes myself.
Right.
I'd still need to practice it, but
yeah, I guess that's where you said it was a numbers game. The more and more we had at our school, we had mock interviews, right? Where companies would come in and they would bring in representatives from their company, and they would set up mock interviews. And I worked at the office of career services, So I was always there. And like when students would not show up for like their, mock interview, my boss would ask me if I could like fill in because like, these companies are spending their time coming there. So I was just going into mock interview after mock interview, and it just turned into like good practice because like
That's great.
I had nothing to worry about because like I was like, fine, I'll fill in.
Yeah.
But I would go in, I would give it my best, and it was like great practice. So I guess that's where like the numbers thing comes in. The more you do them, like the more comfortable, it becomes. But I think like what I picked up from like what you said as well, getting your first internship, which was through a connection of like your track and field alumni.
Yeah.
And I've spoke this, about this to my other guests as well. And it's like almost like a recurring theme where like connections and like networking goes like a long way.
It really does.
Just like, getting to know people, keeping those connections, making those connections and keeping them, down the line, if you need an internship, you need a job, like those people, like, they'll rather hire somebody that they know or they know of someone versus someone random. So I think like networking and like connection was, probably like helped you a lot there as well.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. So you said, as you did your like third internship, you kind of got warmer and warmer towards like knowing what career you want to go into. I'm assuming your third internship, was that like your senior year? I'm assuming like
right before my
right before your senior year.
Yeah, the summer before.
Right. So how did you, you're getting close to graduation. How did you go about your full-time, did you have to apply separately? Was it at one of your internships? And how did that come about?
Similar to the applications for internships, I was just applying. And it was a little bit frustrating because there's cycles with recruiting and companies that look at future college the graduates. Yes, thank you. I was gonna say alum, but future college graduates, it was finance focused in the fall, and then marketing was always way later, spring, and I didn't let that stop me, and I was still applying because I was applying to bigger companies who had it more set in stone. They would be less apt to have like budget changes and get rid of a role, etc. So I went into a final interview actually at Staples for a merchandising role. And this tripped me up where I was doing fairly well, just crumbled under pressure. And in the interviews, like I couldn't handle it. I just was sweating profusely.
I hope you didn't walk out.
No, I simply did not do well because I couldn't even think. I just was, I didn't even understand merchandising really. And they didn't like fully expect you to understand it all, but there was enough questions that I just couldn't really handle. So I didn't even get it. So then I'm applying. And I actually didn't get a job. I didn't have a job when I graduated. And I got it a month or two after graduation. And so I started in July.
Nice. I guess that's a good note, for viewers that are listening, is that like, you can't get discouraged, taking like, if you have a bad interview like that, that's a learning lesson. You know what to prepare for next time, or like, you kind of get the worst situation possible out the way. You're like, it can't get any worse, right? So I like to look at things in like the positive way. Like even if having a bad like interview experience, you're like, hey, it's going to go better from now on, right? Or you learn something from it there. And I know people that like, have gone close to graduation and they didn't have a job and they were super worried and they eventually ended up getting jobs. But I always said like, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? So
it's a little more stressful for sure.
Yeah, right.
Do I wish that I was set in stone and could just not apply or worry about it all the senior year? Yes. But
because you want to be celebrating, be happy.
Yeah. But it really did work out because I found the most amazing role. I learned so much. It got me into this career that I love.
And where was that? What was your first job?
Yeah, so it was at a 2-year-long rotational program.
Okay.
At this company called Dataxu. And they were based in Boston. It was I think my mom helped me find it, a LinkedIn job post, because she was just searching marketing roles in Boston. And I think I knew I wanted like digital marketing or something. Didn't really know how wide of a scope that even is, and how you can do digital marketing at any company nowadays. But it was perfect because it was a rotational program. And
what do you mean by that, like rotational?
yeah, so 2 years, it was, I want to say 4 or 5 different roles. And I just stayed in a role for a few months, learned everything I could, did it as much as I could, and then switched
to
onto
like the next role.
The next role, and so they were all with different teams. So they had inside sales, partnerships, campaigns, so like running ad campaigns on behalf of advertisers, and a support role that was more of troubleshooting the issues with the campaigns, and product marketing, I think, was one.
So all these roles were essentially part of like the marketing sector, I guess, of the company. This was a digital marketing company.
Yeah.
So these were, I guess, were they in one area of directly marketing?
So
or did you like
the company itself is a demand side platform.
Okay, got
so
it.
They house all advertising campaigns. They since have been acquired by Roku, and Roku used that to house all their data and everything, but that's besides the point, I guess. But everything was surrounding the money that they got from advertisers' campaigns and taking fees off of the money that the advertisers are spending.
Got it. Did you like the rotational program? Do you think it was like beneficial the way it was, like switching to different parts? Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And it's so funny how the world works, because I remember day one sitting in a conference room, a woman is standing in front of a board giving a lesson of what is a pixel. And I ran into her about a month or so ago in New York City. And we exchanged looks. We're like, how do we know each other?
Oh, wow. Small world.
Connected the dots, like exchanged numbers, gave each other a hug, had a great conversation. It was fantastic. But I absolutely loved the rotational program. I can't recommend that enough, because it helped me so much to determine what types of things I like day to day.
Yeah.
I left that rotational program understanding that, okay, this partnerships rotation was the best one. I loved it so much. I want my full-time job to be that.
Yeah.
And that's what I went after, and that's what I've been doing. And I think it gave me a leg up.
Yeah, I think like the rotational program idea is very cool. And like my first job that I had, when I first like got the job, this was like I was still in school, and when I got the offer, and they had a rotational program, and that seemed so attractive to me, because I was like, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but this is perfect. I'll get to work with different areas. But by the time I started at the job, they got rid of the rotational program. Yeah, and then it was like, I was like, damn, that was like the one thing that like pulled me towards it. But by the time I started, they got rid of it.
Yeah, they're not common. I think I understand it's kind of a lot of work and extra coordinating for a company to figure out, okay, let's have this person do all of this, and coordinating what work to give them.
I think that's probably why, like, they're probably just trying to cut costs and like overall getting rid of it, because I'm sure like if they have people keep moving around, like they're gonna spend so much time, energy, money, and they might not want to stay in that area. Yeah. So you were you said it was called Dataxu. You were there for about 2 years. You said rotational program. And you did mention that, Dataxu got acquired by Roku. I'm assuming, is that where the 2 years comes in? Or?
Yeah, well, I was there when Roku acquired Dataxu.
Okay.
So then I became a Roku employee. But I still had to finish my rotations, and it seemed pretty kosher for them to just keep going
Yeah.
and continue along with what was already planned. But then COVID hit, and at my 2-year mark, actually, I was laid off.
From Roku.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because it was July of 2020.
Yeah.
So it was,
Tough times.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tough times.
Yeah. I guess, it was good that you got the Roku on the resume. I mean, Roku's a big name.
Yeah.
But how, so, I'm sure like you were a recent graduate too, a few years out of college at that point. COVID hit. I mean, it was surprising to everybody. It was unprecedented times. No one really knew how to go about it. So when you get laid off, like, what's your thought process there? Because like a lot of companies just stopped hiring too.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you get laid off and like these companies are hiring like because of COVID. It just everything like shut down.
Oh yeah. I mean, first off, I was so upset. 'Cause
Right.
I was just so young still, and I was like, what?
How long were you under Roku before like you got laid off? Like how long after they acquired Dataxu?
Maybe 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and then you get laid off.
Yeah.
What's your thought process then? Like what do you do?
I cried a little. I went on a 6-mile walk and called everyone I could, and just had to like let it out.
Vent out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking about like your thought process of like when you get laid off is because even though we're a few years out of COVID now, there has been so many layoffs that have been going on. You know, with so many big companies, small companies. Like I feel like every other day I'm either reading on LinkedIn or hearing of a friend or a friend of a friend that's getting laid off.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot.
Right, and I'm sure there's people out there that will take something away from like your experience and kind of like how you dealt with it and you went about it. Because if it's your first time getting laid off, it's just like, God, what do I do?
Yeah. I mean, luckily, I had great parents who supported me and a mother who had been there, done that, and was very good with sort of the advice and just acknowledgement that, okay, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
Or maybe it won't, but get ready to work your ass off because it's a full-time job to find a full-time job.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So it was a lot. And in the midst of it, I was trying to figure out if I wanted a job still in Boston and trying to find one that was maybe fully remote. It was so weird where it was such mixed messaging from companies about being remote or like going back into the office.
Yeah.
Like no one knew what was going to happen. So I was trying to like sort of deal with that because there was a lot of roles that I was very interested in that I had learned from my rotational program that were partnership focused, external facing. Every single one of them, or 99% of them, were in New York because everybody has a New York office. So.
Do you mind mentioning some of those? Like, what are some of those, I guess, roles and areas that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of them were like account managers, account directors, customer success managers, a lot of those types of roles, I think.
I guess in short, what would like an account manager do on like a day-to-day? What would their like job and role be?
Anything the client wants.
Right. And I guess in the marketing side is probably more related to advertising and their goals regarding that.
Yes, it was still all advertising. So I was also trying to figure out, do I want to be at a company where I'm working with advertisers?
Yeah.
Do I want to be at a company where I'm working with publishers? I knew that I'm very extroverted. I wanted an external facing job, but did it matter who I was talking to?
Right.
And also, do I try to get more of a technical role, like a technical account manager role, or do I not kid myself and just stick with the basic people-to-people skills? So I was actually logging everything that I was applying to in an Excel sheet. I logged
Keeping track.
Yeah,
Yes.
when I applied, the job title, where it was based, like everything I could really, and log like the updates, if I got anything back, like when my interview would be, extra notes. I also had a list that was all the different contacts that I could use, I was starting to build up my network.
Yeah.
And it wasn't huge at the time, but I was starting to get connected to as many people as I could. So part of that full-time job,
Yeah.
to get a full-time job, I was scheduling calls all day. Even if it was fruitless or I had no, like, actual, there was no job to even apply to yet. Like, I'm going to learn something if I talk to someone.
Wow, you had great mindset, especially in that time where, like, it's lockdown.
That's where my mother came into help.
Yeah.
Because that had been her mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fully went in with that, and it definitely was frustrating. And there were times where I was so over it, but it helped me so much. And I learned about different companies, learned about different roles, like where in my head I'm thinking, where could I go, what career path, what trajectory, and all that.
That's awesome. I don't know if I would have been as motivated during such time. I mean, I wasn't. I was recently graduated from school, but my work had gotten delayed, but I was like, hey, this is great. Everything's locked down. We get to relax for a little bit. So the fact that you were that motivated to, like, do all that work when, everything's shut down and we didn't know for how long, that's great. And so did that, I guess, all that work, I'm sure it led you somewhere. Did you find, I guess, your next opportunity from that?
I found a great role. It was based in New York, though. So that was
How long did that take you?
Yeah, so it took me 4 months.
4 months, okay. It's not bad.
I was actually unemployed for more like 5, because by the time I accepted the job to when they actually had me start, it was a full month.
Yeah.
Which is surprising. But yeah, it was a while of being unemployed, but I found a great company, great role. It was encompassing pretty much everything that I wanted.
What was the company and what was, like, the role you got hired for?
Yeah, it was called Magnite, the company. It was an account manager role, and it was at a slightly different type of company, but always still within AdTech and programmatic advertising.
Got it.
So my first job, it was at a DSP, demand side platform. So all advertisers, they were acquired by Roku, which is in kind of multiple things. We call them like a publisher because they house supply, but they have extra data because they have the TCL TVs.
Okay.
And that was, like, you just learn so much about just that world. And then Magnite is called an SSP, which is a supply side platform. So publisher focused, where all of the inventory flows through, and then we would send requests out to the advertisers at the DSPs, like my first job.
Yeah.
It's
a complicated process.
The ecosystem is absolutely buck wild, but it was amazing. I learned so much, and I just loved it. Loved the people.
So when you start working at Magnite as account manager, when you start working there, I guess, how many accounts or clients are you working with? And, do you start with one when you get started? Do you start with 2? And, like, what do you do on a day-to-day? How do you know what to do,
Yeah, something that is really interesting at every single company, it varies so much with onboarding. Magnite was really good with just period of learning, and then a period of onboarding slowly, and then
letting you be on your own.
Let loose, but you have support.
Right.
A lot of companies are pretty crappy about the education process and onboarding, but they were overall really, really good with that, so that helped a ton. And the structure was definitely more of bulk, a lot of accounts that you don't get as many requests, like, coming in from a single account. So it was more of the aggregation that is what created the volume of work. So with that, kind of less pressure, lower stakes, because these were smaller accounts that I was working with, not a ton of revenue, and then you work your way up and get
with like
to
bigger
bigger
size.
accounts.
Yeah.
Yes. And
so is there a limit, I guess, on how many, like, I guess, limit of what size companies you're going to work with, you know, starting out, or limit of how many clients companies you're going to work with, or no?
not really.
Like someone might work with like 20 small sized ones versus
It can
5 big
happen.
ones.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
limit to it.
Not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless I was, you know, screaming and crying like I can't do this anymore. The workload is crazy, but it's possible you might not even hear from an account for a full week.
Yeah.
And so that one is negligible. But I worked my way up to being on the Spotify account, which is where I learned about podcast advertising.
Nice.
And
like here, right? We might use you.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great account.
Was that like your biggest account, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, Spotify.
Yeah, I would say so.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How long ago was that? And how long, I guess, were you on that account for?
I was on the account for at least a year. I was at Magnite for 2 years, and then I switched over to the role that I'm at now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I was on Spotify for at least a year.
Nice.
And I learned a lot about audio ads specifically.
So what prompted you, since you mentioned you were at Magnite for 2 years, you know, it sounded like a great company. It sounded like they did great with like education and kind of getting you going. And it sounds like there was great support system there as well. And you got exposed to, you know, big accounts and clients such as Spotify. I mean, you know, very big. What prompted you to kind of want to switch companies? And I guess we'll hear about where you went after that.
Yeah, I was never really looking. I was starting to try and figure things out. Well, I was trying to get into the next role. I knew that much. I was looking at, okay, what would a promotion be like? What would it be like if I looked at a product manager role that was still within Magnite? And I was kind of assessing all of that. And then at the same time, I got reached out on LinkedIn by a recruiter.
Yeah.
And I read the description. I was like,
it's like tempting.
I guess I'll just take the call.
Yeah.
And I took the call, and I obviously was impressed, and it sounded cool, and I just wanted to keep hearing more. But they flung me into interviews, and I was like, I guess I'll interview.
You're like, yeah, one more step.
Yeah, and then it was really great interviewing. They were all super, super nice. And I was so stressed at that point because I did really care about
You're like,
Magnite.
I like my company, but this sounds really good.
Yeah, for a few weeks at least, I was so stressed about it. But it just altogether was an opportunity that I couldn't say no to.
Right.
So it felt like a big leap, but I'm very happy I took it.
So what was the company?
FreeWheel.
FreeWheel. Okay.
Yes.
And so for those that don't know, might be new to them, tell us a little bit about what FreeWheel does.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm working my way through this crazy ecosystem that is programmatic. FreeWheel is also an SSP, which Magnite was, but it's also an ad server. So an SSP, it funnels through a lot of the inventory, the available ad slots, and will send to advertisers. But an ad server is the, I guess, decision maker.
Got it.
That really like chooses what the whole commercial break will be. And slots in the ads and decides, okay, this one wins. I'm going to show this. And that's pretty cool. There's a lot of power in being the decision maker. And FreeWheel as a company is owned by Comcast Advertising. So it was backed by this huge company that has existed for a century. So that was kind of different as well.
Yeah.
To have that backing instead of like a 10-year-old company.
Yeah. You know, before we had you come on, I did a little bit of, you know, research and prep as well. So I was learning a little bit about FreeWheel. And, you know, when I guess when I heard about advertisements and doing ads online, I feel like a lot of people think about Google ads and Facebook ads, and I was learning that FreeWheel is a big competitor to Google, actually.
Yeah.
A very big competitor, and so that was pretty interesting for me to like learn as well. So when you left Magnite and you were account manager there and you joined FreeWheel, do you also join as an account manager?
No, so I'm actually an account director. But then we also have this weird internal title of strategic relationship manager. So that was amazing for me because I knew I wanted to really dig in deeper with strategy and not have to deal as much with reporting and troubleshooting deals
work
that aren't working, and the little nitty-gritty annoyances of,
so it was kind of like a promotion.
It absolutely was. Yeah.
Nice. So
it was a big step up.
Tell me a little bit about your experience, I guess, at FreeWheel versus like a smaller company, for those that might be experiencing, deciding between going to like a smaller, ad company versus a giant like FreeWheel. What's like the day-to-day differences, and, what would you suggest, I guess the benefits with the pros and cons of both?
Yeah. So it is cool. We get more resourcing, but it's stressful because there's so many more people.
Yeah.
There's so much more extra communication that needs to go on. You need to figure out, you have a question, you don't know it. Who do you go to? That's a battle in and of itself. And then just broader org, like different teams cross-functionally need to work together. And it's so much harder to work fast and smart with so many more people.
Yeah.
And it kind of...
It's bigger organization,
Yeah, I think it's always going to be a struggle. And it's a lot more to deal with, to be honest. It just is, it's more difficult to work out the kinks and go to market with something quicker that's fleshed out. But I don't know, I still really like it. I think also with FreeWheel, because of the ad server aspect, the technology is wild and it's convoluted and so confusing, and it's like boggles my mind the things that we're like we can do, but it took a while to digest, and it's more upkeep, I think, because of the extra sophistication that the platform and the tech has.
Yeah, a couple years ago I tried to learn a little bit about Google ads and Facebook ads. It was so confusing. And as I was trying to learn about it, I realized how much there is that goes behind it. And it was just mind-boggling. And I was getting frustrated. And I just stopped learning because I was like, this is crazy. And I remember like I had like a side project that I was doing, and I created like a Google Ads account. And I was trying to like, test with like $10, make some ads. And I remember my account got banned, and they wouldn't even tell me why. I must have like done something wrong that I didn't even know, And it was just so frustrating because I was like, this is so confusing already. And so I like gave up. But if I need to learn a little bit more about Google Ads or ads overall, I know who to come to. Yeah. So looking back, now you're still at FreeWheel, correct? And I assume you love it there.
It's great.
Before actually I get into my next question, you said that your biggest client at Magnite was Spotify. Do you have any clients at FreeWheel, and I guess at that level of popularity?
So another difference with a small company versus big company, at Magnite, I was on like a dozen accounts. At FreeWheel, I'm on one.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're pretty busy, so is it still a lot of work even with one?
I didn't know what busy was until I worked at FreeWheel.
Wow, okay. So that's the difference. Like you could be on many accounts and be just as busy on being on one account for one client. Yeah.
So the difference is that I'm on NBC, which is
huge.
colossal account. And thousands of employees at NBC, but also tons of different projects. And they're trying to figure out their priorities. They're trying to get more savvy with digital and programmatic and building out their teams and their strategies for that and this ever-changing ecosystem of programmatic. But it's a lot because I am always submerged in emails and projects from NBC because the account team is a lot smaller and we have to take in a lot and try to figure out a lot.
Yeah.
And they're doing the Olympics this summer and there's a lot going on. It's very exciting, but
wow,
it's just a constant juggling.
have you started doing any work, I guess, for the Olympics?
Yes.
I guess I didn't know you've already started like doing the work for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming up.
Yeah. I honestly,
trials are in like
I did
a
it.
month?
I forgot that the Olympics are even like coming up.
Yeah.
There's just so many things going on.
No, it's funny because people have said that to me of shock and awe and saying, I haven't heard anything about the Olympics actually. You know,
Well, I don't watch too many like live television. I usually just watch my Netflix show. So like, you know,
Okay.
I'm not really, I wasn't paying too much. I have so much work and like so busy. I just forgot, you know, I heard like a few weeks back and I just like forgot about it. But so looking back at like your time from college to your full-time work now, if you were to go back, would you do anything differently? And that includes kind of like your majors, your studies, internships, the route you took for full-time. Would you do anything differently along that route?
I suppose I probably would go directly into the Carroll School of Management. That way, I think I would have been able to bypass some of the calculus classes and the econometrics classes that were the bane of my existence.
Yeah.
And be able to do something maybe more business focused of a company structure or something along those lines. I think that would have helped, but I'm honestly still so happy with how everything worked out.
Yeah.
Because it was a little bit of a struggle, but I figured it out.
Yeah.
And I had a very strong sense and confidence of what I was doing, and even like a couple years out of school, continuing what I was doing, I still had that sense of confidence. And I know that for a lot of people that comes way later and they're kind of second guessing or they just don't like what they got into.
Right. So do you think I guess kind of leading off of what you said is, you know, somebody going into a field that they don't like, right? Let's say somebody's in a field completely outside of marketing and ad tech, right? If somebody watches this episode and it's like, wow, that actually sounds like really interesting work, and they want to tap into this field, how do you think somebody can tap into it? Let's say with a completely unrelated major. Let's say they're in business, let's say management, you know, I don't know, business analyst, consulting, something unrelated. What do you think their best, I guess, route is in order to like tap into a field, you know, a job similar to what you're doing? I guess not at that level, but to kind of just break into this field.
That's a great question.
Because they can't really do internships.
It's tough, yeah.
You're too old to do internships, you know.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's not impossible because there's so many crossover skills and like just people skills is huge. It can take you so far, and you have to just find a company that could provide basic training and be willing to like take you on. I think
kind of be able to like learn those skills as you go along.
Yeah. And there are certain roles where your level of knowledge might not have to be as deep. Maybe it can be more surface level. If you're just an account executive salesperson and you can learn the pitch and you don't need to know how exactly it works. that'll be easier.
Is there anything like people can, I guess, do on their own online? Like, I don't know, I guess like
Yeah.
learning, like, I don't know, getting a certificate maybe in ads or ad sales. Like, do you think those would
Yeah, I
help
mean,
to kind of just show like you're interested maybe? I don't know.
there are so many resources online. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of mind-boggling at this point. For programmatic specifically, there are really basic, good starting level certificates. I did one my like second or third year of my career at the IAB.
Mm-hmm.
So the IAB is the Interactive Advertising Bureau, and they set standards for the programmatic industry. Standards in terms of like kind of what language to speak
Yeah.
with the tech. These companies have to like talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're basically like writing languages
Yeah.
almost. So they had really good basic courses, and that would I think would be a great introduction.
Yeah.
But there's also like LinkedIn Learning, and
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to go into like social media, I think I want to say Facebook had certificates and stuff. So there is so much out
Yeah.
there. I think it's kind of finding what skills do you have right now that you think could work for a role, and a lot of it is like sifting through job descriptions and understanding the job descriptions.
Yeah. And being able to be like, hey, like I have these skills and I can kind of alter it, and or I can use them for like, this part of their job.
Yeah.
And I think like highlighting that will probably be like beneficial.
Yeah, you can figure out what do I have, what do I lack, okay, like focus on what do I lack, and how to maybe research about that
Right.
piece, or
Yeah.
yeah.
My last question, and we'll wrap it up after that. Could you give kind of like if you go look online, and I like to ask people directly, because like you look online, you just find so many different information. Could you give kind of like a range of like what would people expect? Like, would be the salary for different positions like in your field? Whether it is internship, starting out like straight out of college into account manager role, and as you go up. And I know it's going to be a range, because smaller companies, big companies.
Yeah.
What is like the range starting out, and then what's the progression looks like, in this field?
It's kind of all over the place. I think because digital advertising is just new, and I mean, you think of like the first ads, they didn't even start in the 2000s. I think it was like 2010. It's so new, and it's truly the Amazon. It's a little bit wild,
Yeah.
a little bit unpredictable, but I think internships, definitely try to get a paid internship.
Right. I mean, it could be as low as like not paid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can start from the bottom with unpaid, try to get the paid. I'm assuming a paid one could be like $20.
Right.
I don't have a great sense of that anymore.
But it changes like year to year, and
Yeah, and I think like starting out, my first job was $48K a year, and I think that was like pretty on par
Yeah.
for someone just out of school. But yeah, it was $48K, and that, I'm trying to think, my title was account associate. So that was any sort of associate like title like that, I think is pretty much
Around
entry
that
level.
range.
That's
Yeah.
where you're starting, and then working your way up. I actually recently looked at a job because someone was talking. They were like, "Oh, they work at Walmart Connect. That's their DSP." And I was just so interested that I looked up. They were a campaign manager in New York. The range was like $98K to $120K or something like that.
Okay. For New York.
Yeah, so that'll also vary. New
Right.
York will pay more. Boston, not as much, but like
a little,
decent.
just slightly less, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Less,
slightly
I'd say.
less. The remote jobs can be very iffy. Those are usually less. Because I've looked at those.
It's a trade-off.
Yes, exactly. No,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah. I mean, you get so much time back, you know.
Yeah. And then, like, there's so many nuances because also, if you're looking at a role that has a high base and low bonus, that might not be that bad because bonuses are never promised to you.
Right.
And so this role that I'm in, it has a very high percentage that is encompassed just from bonuses. And that used to be paid out quarterly. So then you also have to think about that.
Yeah.
Now it's switched where half of it is paid out quarterly and half of it is paid out annually. These are all these things that you like really have to think about. And then on top of just insurance and what you pay for that and how good it is. I also want to say it can be so hard to stay with a company nowadays and get what you are owed and
what you deserve
for your salary. And you can get promoted, but you might get a 5% increase, nothing crazy. And a lot of companies, they might not even do any sort of merit raise or whatever. I've been at a mixture where the companies might do a merit raise of like 2%. One time I got a merit raise that it was like 10%. They were like, you're doing great. And I was mind blown. And I think too, with advertising specifically, they are not as, they're not as just like traditional. Even with 401ks. For a long time, I didn't get any 401k matching because they are new and don't have a lot of foundational standing and everything, and they're just trying to go public, and it's a lot. So that was enticing because Comcast advertising that now I'm under, I got the 401k match.
You're like, this is great. This is new.
Yeah, and because I just job hopped.
Yeah.
That's where I got the biggest increase in my salary.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's like, it shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is.
Right. I was going to say that's probably why a lot of people will just switch jobs because like the raise that they might get at their job will be like a fraction of what another company will pay them to move. And it sucks because companies do lose a lot of good talent because of that. But yeah, sometimes companies, I guess, can't afford it, you know, whatever business decision and reasons it is. But yeah. I'm sure like, you know, I don't know. I actually don't know. Like, I'm sure like there's companies that are like, they probably know like they're going to lose someone good, but they're like, hey, we can't go above, you know, paying this percentage to them. But I wonder if some of them are just like oblivious to it and like they're just like, but then they lose great, you know, talent.
It's probably a mix. Yeah. And I definitely try to be very thoughtful about it. I definitely would not have taken the leap if I didn't think that it would be challenging and a learning experience. Like I wouldn't have just left Magnite for any other role.
Right.
So it's proven to be great.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it sounds like you did give it you said you were stressed for a few weeks. So it sounds like you gave it, you know, plenty of thought before you made that decision.
Oh my God. Yeah. I like couldn't sleep. I was talking to everyone. I was like, what do I do?
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up our talk here, I want to know what your advice would be if there's college students in school or if even in high school that are kind of, you know, hearing this and they like, you know, the career path that you've taken. What's your advice to them in order to be on the best path possible to reach, you know, success in this career field?
In this field?
Right. Yeah. Going through the years in college and
yeah, I guess a lot of it can be the easier stuff is for me just talking to people, picking people's brains, as many people as possible, but then also doing your own research and like staying up to date. There's this website called AdExchanger, and they post really, really great articles every single day. They have podcasts. It's all the happenings in this industry, and they can categorize it. You can go to their website, search specifically something like privacy. You're interested in data privacy, then it'll pull up all the articles for data privacy. So looking and reading all of those articles online is very
staying
helpful.
Up to date with, like,
yeah,
the
just
industry.
general, staying up to date, and you kind of start to understand what's going on in this industry, what is changing and evolving, what needs to be worked on, those sort of things. And and just like staying at it.
And I know we touched on this earlier too, but I want to like double back on it. If somebody asked you like, hey, I don't know what major to go into, like I want to end up in your field, in your career field, what major should I choose? Should I go double major, minor? What should I do? What would your advice be to them to benefit them the most to end up in the field that you're at?
It's funny because I think that there are colleges now that have just advertising majors. It
directly
depends. It really depends on the college. So if you okay, I want to go in advertising, you see there happens to be an advertising major, sure, go for it. If you're
specific niche,
if you're a little bit hesitant and you don't want to be stuck in something, then choose something more general. I think a part of it was a little bit like being scared of digging your own grave, so to speak.
Like going down the wrong path, being scared of that,
because this isn't a sort of niche industry. I will say words that you probably would have never heard of because it's wild. But it's something that I realized I was very interested in, and I'm never bored. I'm always learning. It's always bonkers and can be frustrating, but I do enjoy my job. And so I think a little bit I've gotten into this niche where maybe it'll be harder to get myself out. But I'm okay with that. But because I know
this is the field for you. Cool.
So if you're more on the line, go to economics, do the economics degree.
I mean, that kind of gives you the basics as well, but also other routes for you to explore if need be. And
I think every college also just has the basic courses that you need to take anyways. I think most do, at least. Like mine had the requirements for philosophy and English, the general ones. So
cool. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for coming on Career Tea today, sharing your journey, your experiences. I definitely learned a lot about your field, and I'm sure our viewers will have learned a lot as well. As you go through your career through FreeWheel, and maybe your career takes you to other companies, maybe you stay here, we'd love to have you back on again. And, you've recently started at FreeWheel. I would say, early in your, career at FreeWheel, it's been a couple years, right?
Yeah, I've been at FreeWheel for a year and a half.
Year and a half. So, hopefully in a little bit, once you get a little bit more into it, we'll have you back on again and we'll share some more experiences.
Right on.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Awesome.